Ooh, it's working. It's working.
It's working. Hell yeah.
You always have to celebrate it when StreamYard goes through correctly the first time.
Well, you have to celebrate it when Burtons are able to use technology too. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's true. I usually break. I gotta admit, I break things more than I fix them.
I break
Won't
things
hide from the
constantly
truth.
with technology.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see here. Alrighty, so everybody who's checking out my feed today, this is me having a chat with Kira, who is my younger sister, um, and a pain in my butt. No, I'm just kidding. I have to make fun of her
No, I
because she's
am.
my younger sister. Yeah, that's true.
I live for it.
However, after I don't really tell that story very often, but um, before I got cancer, I really wasn't connected to my any of my siblings very well. It was like the second that any of us came of age in our house, we split, and that was
Yeah.
kind of the way things were. And
And our
after
parents never, sorry. I was
no,
just
it's
going to
okay.
say
You can
our
say
parents
almost
never
anything after
promoted
that if you want.
closeness.
Well, no, they thought they did. They're like, oh, all the hard things in life should make you guys bond stronger. Yeah, that's absolutely not the way that crap works.
No,
Um,
that's
but
not how it works.
I'm not here to complain about mom and dad because we basically be
No,
completely
no, no,
wrong.
no.
Um, we're here to talk about something we're working on together, and the reason why I mentioned cancer is because when I got sick, Kira invaded my life after, like, while I was sick, and did her best to do so afterwards. Um, and we re-engaged, and we've been talking about doing a book for a very, very, very long time. I mean, I've helped illustrate Kira's books, and she's put in poetry and Damage, and she's a character in Damage. So we've worked together before, but it's a little bit different with the Ballad of Nod. The Ballad of Nod is something where it is a concept I came up with. It's a concept I uh, figured out with Camille, but Kira helps me write it, especially with the dialogue, to try to make sure the characters have the right ages and the right, just the right tone as stuff goes on. And then she actually started getting the obnoxious need to start giving me other scenes I had to figure out how to draw.
Yes,
Things that the writers do.
that's my favorite story from Nod, is telling you to draw the sky dancers and us getting into a fight about how it wasn't possible with physics. And the writer, of course, is like, I don't care.
Yeah, it took me so long to figure out how
But it came out awesome.
I'm still working on that page. Actually, I haven't gotten that page done yet.
Are you? I thought you fit. Well, anyway, it's
No,
going to be awesome.
I worked out the rough. I know my roughs look really good, but it's not. To me, it still needs some more work. So, but anyway, there are questions I wanted to ask you. There are questions that I'm sure you wanted to ask me. We're promoting the book, so anybody who is taking a look, feel free to send in some questions. I'll see them. But Kira and I wanted to talk a little bit about why and what we were trying to do with Nod. So I will let Kira go first. The Nod, just so that everybody understands, is a comic book series. It's going to be a mini series, 6 issues. That the first issue is currently on Kickstarter, which you can see the address rotating below. But Kira, what is it about Nod that you enjoy doing, and why are you doing it?
I think the thing that I enjoyed the most about Nod is I think you sort of delved into the scarier parts, and I really opened up. We both did, but I think I really opened up the childlike wonder part of Nod, and accessing sort of the feminine power of Nod as well. And so those things were really great to explore. I always have a childlike view of life, anyways, if I can possibly help it. So I loved exploring that and finding all the things in Nod that we were going to add, all the little bits and pieces from Camille's life and our life that were so personal that we wanted to put in there. And it became this beautiful story of a child surviving grief. And for those of you that know, 3 years ago, two of our sisters passed away. So grief has been sort of an overarching theme in my life for at least the past 3 years. And this book can help younger kids deal with grief. And I think that's amazing. It's going to make such a difference to the kids who grew up like we did and to the adults that they became.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I got to admit that if it was me writing about myself, it probably would be 18 pages of a teddy bear fighting a monster, which it isn't. It actually has a story in it. I do enjoy fights and whatnot. For me, the story actually goes back to before that. I've always wanted to do a story that was in the Dreamlands. Like I've told the story a little bit about how Camille helped me kind of discover what I wanted to write about, and that and dealing with the grief of losing dad. It Nod took shape. But before that, I've always wanted to do a story about the dream world, and I never really knew what I wanted it to be, other than the fact that dreams are just a place where both something scary happens and where something beautiful happens. That was pretty much all I ever thought about it before. That was my main focus for it. Whenever I was trying to focus on it in itself. Um, so for me, it was about that, along with trying to help me deal with all the silliness that comes with grief. Or maybe silliness is the wrong word, but sure as hell feels silly when you lose that much control of yourself. Um, Camille's not here. She's off playing with friends. She's a teenager now.
I
But
remember when we first started talking about Nod and Camille was 4 years old. This is such a cute story. She had a soda and she turned her head and I drank some of it and she said, "What happened?" I said, "Goblins." And
oh,
it went from that to turning into like a 4 year long story about these goblins that stole her drink. And yeah,
well,
it was adorable.
what you didn't know is that I'd actually done the same thing to her, and I named the goblin. His name is Angler, and he lives in the vents, and he uses a fishing pole to steal things. That was the rest of the story. So when you automatically told her it was goblins, she automatically assumed that you meant Angler was also in your house. So
Obviously.
this poor kid has feared goblins and all these other things, and been told that it exists her whole life. So I'm sure.
Fairies, she leaves gifts for fairies. That's just who Camille is.
Yeah, we went on a hike recently, and she builds these little stone temples, and then puts inside of it a sugared piece of mango in each one of them that she builds, and then leaves them as an offering to the fairies. And that is very much who she is. And Faye is the main character. The main protagonist. She does have a sidekick named Patches, who's this kind of gruff but sweet-hearted teddy bear. And Faye is based on Camille. It's not Camille. It's not the same person or the same, you know, anything. But she's based on him. Uh, Camille used to have a polka dot jacket. That's why Faye has a polka dot jacket. And Camille loves wearing tutus. That's why Faye is running around in a tutu. So there are certain things about it that are similar. And one of them is actually Patches. Patches is real. He's a teddy bear that Camille's had since she was, I want to say 3 no, or 2-ish. Pretty much as soon as she was able to find him. And she found
Yeah.
him. She found him on her own. He was sitting on a shelf in her aunt's house, and he'd been sitting there for 4.5 years, I think, and just sitting there on this shelf. Nobody touching him, nobody looking at him, nobody paying attention to him, until Camille walked in the room. And as soon as she was tall enough to get him off that shelf, that's how Patches ended up being her little sidekick. Those are elements too. Like, I do a lot of hero worship in the stuff I create, but it's not so much a hero worship. It's more like trying to show gratitude for the things that I love. At least that's how I look at it. And I'm really grateful that we had Camille and that we had her when we had her, and that it was my way of figuring out how to bring storytelling into my life with my kids. Our parents did not teach us how to be parents, like this much.
Yeah,
that.
I would often bring them poetry, and Dad would say stuff like, "That sounds really pretty, but I have no idea what you're talking about."
That's just, he was honest about it.
He was honest about it, and I couldn't ask him for more. He just didn't know what I was talking about. But yeah,
there were limits there, and well, they didn't teach us how to deal with things when we lost someone either. I mean, Dad lost people, but his method of dealing with it was to get high out of his mind and do whatever reckless, crazy things he was going to do. And unfortunately, that's all he taught me. And I wanted...
That's all he taught any of us.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wanted to do more than that. And I also have a little trouble expressing myself sometimes. So I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out how to talk to Camille about the fact that we had lost him and we lost my mom and stuff like that. And it came out into this storytelling. And that's kind of how Nod began its structure. That's when it became an idea of a young girl that had to go into the dream world. And kind of like Alice in Wonderland, when it comes to that whole leave one world and travel to the next concept. Almost, I don't want to call it isekai. What?
I said curiouser and curiouser.
Curiouser and curiouser. But the reason why I mentioned that is because when we were kids, we spent like zero time indoors.
Zero time.
When before I was 10. Because before I was 10, we lived in a beautiful place that was basically part of the Tahoe National Forest. There were trees everywhere. There were creeks and ditches filled with old mining equipment. And let's see, what else did we find? We found 2 hippie communes and a nude beach and all kinds of other crazy stuff. And we'd go, literally, as soon as my brother Steve and I were awake, or our brother Steve and I were awake, we'd walk off, and trailing behind us would be this 3-year-old little girl, insisting on trying to keep up with her older brothers who are wandering around in the woods. Yeah, and I wanted it to feel like that.
It does feel like that. I think we put a lot of effort into sort of reserving that part of childhood, or preserving that part of childhood where you can still, you're brave and you're frightened and everything's beautiful and scary at the same time. I think as adults, we forget a lot. The kids are doing everything for the first time. They're living their lives in this way of experiencing things, and they're doing it for the first time. And that's what Nod really brings home, is like that beauty of walking into wonder and like coming home to it. Mm-hmm. That's why Nod is a fantastic tale.
For example, there was a time when Kira, Stevie, and I were on a frozen pond, and we heard this horrible groaning noise. I swear to God, I thought it was a monster or something. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew it was bigger than us, and it sounded hungry, and it sounded angry, and all I could think of was that we had to go. And I turned around and I grabbed my brother and my sister and picked them up and tried to run on ice.
Is that when you broke your nose?
Yes, and exactly what happened is exactly what everybody's thinking would happen, which is the Scooby-Doo run. And
then dropping your sister on her face.
Exactly. And then then when we finished panicking and got to the other side of the pond, some of us bloodier than before, we got up and turned around, and a cow wandered out of the bushes. I don't know what the cow was doing
No
there.
one ever believes these stories.
Well, that's a simple and innocent one. Or the time when a entire family of bobcats decided to live under our house for a year.
Under our house, yes. And our sister tried to adopt and tame one. It was great. Did not go well.
No, it did not.
But for all the things that didn't go well, and that's part of Nod too, is it's very honest in the fact that there's beauty and darkness and all that kind of stuff. Like, we had the most beautiful place in the world, and to see there was darkness in our family, but that's childhood. You know, part of it is like learning to grow up and be brave through the darkness instead of just letting it overwhelm you.
Exactly.
And, you know,
and that's what I want to let everybody know a little bit more about. And I will, if you go over to Kickstarter, it shows you actually a very generous portion of the book where you can see both the art and some of the story. It's going to show you this tale about a little girl who lost her father to cancer and is trying to deal with it. Like Kira said, it's got an element of grief to it, and that grief is literally bringing nightmares into her life. And Patches is the thing that's stopping it.
And then
the
when
first
she
book is
loses
going to start
Patches,
off that. She loses Patches at the end of the book. The biggest, baddest of them all comes through into her room, and he ends up dragging Patches back into the dream world. Now, the first issue is just the introduction to the story, introduction to the characters. It's going to get a little bit more involved. We're going to meet some friends in the dream realm, and we're going to go on a roller coaster as we follow her all the way into dealing with all of this. And I want everybody who thinks that the sound of something that is a cross between, gosh, I don't even know what to say it's a cross between, but if you grew up and you understood that the darkness in children's movies was there on purpose so that kids would learn to stand up to it, if you were there to help them learn how to deal with it, those things are a huge part of it. And if you're enjoying that part, I want everybody to go to Kickstarter and check it out.
Alice in Wonderland meets Wizard of Oz 2.
Oh God, you are obsessed with Wizard of Oz 2.
I am. I'm sorry. It was really good. I love Wizard of Oz 2. It's terrifying and at the same time enchanting, and it's a great movie.
I went back and rewatched that thing. That movie is so silly, and it's got so many silly elements to it.
It's scary.
It does have lots of elements. Oz is a great place. It's wondrous and it's scary at the same time, just like the woods that are deep inside of Nod, which is where Faye's going to be spending some time. So, Kira, I want to thank you for coming on here and helping me share a little bit about why we do this and what we're doing. We'll be back a little bit later on. We're only 2 days into the campaign. Yesterday was the first. Today's the second. We're already at 31%, which is a good spot to be. There is a long distance to go. We are going to put this one up for 30 days. We're trying to raise about $2,500 so that we can get the books printed. And when the books are all printed, they'll be going out. The artwork's done. The books are completely finished. It's really just about making sure that we have the assets to go ahead and get them printed so everybody can enjoy it and share it. So everybody who is taking a look at this, do me a favor. Please go ahead and check it out. We'll add the link onto the video. And I hope you guys had a great afternoon. We appreciate everybody who's already been over there supporting us. Just please go ahead and share back, comment, yell from the rooftops, because this is a lot of fun. We want to share with as many people as possible. Thank you.
Come on, pocket boys and goth girls. Let's do this. It's right up your alley.
Indeed. It is definitely a pocket boy goth girl book. End stream. Here we go.